Today I want to talk about virtual ensembles. I personally made the Ellis Virtual School song, and I want to show you every step I took to create that for two reasons. Either one, you can use it as a step-by-step tutorial to create your own, or number two, you can use this to explain to other people why you don't want to do this. Let's take a look at it. I'm breaking this video into 6 parts. Create a listening track, create directions, download and organize, create the audio, create the video, and export and share for the internet to see. Let's start with number 1. I need to create a sing-along track. So I open up Cubase, which is what I like to use to record and manipulate audio on my Windows computer. So the first thing I did was record piano. I went back and recorded ukulele over that. I exhausted the instruments in my room that matched the vibe of this song, so then I wanted to add orchestra, so I put in some MIDI strings. They sound like this. All right, and now the most important part was my voice. And not just my voice, but also counting in my own voice. So the students, when they hear the track, hear this. 1, 2, ready, go. Alice. And that count off is super important, that everyone hits the first word all together. And even in my experience of doing this, there's a little bit of timidness at the beginning. And so all of my Ellis's were a little late because they heard the count off and they didn't want to be the first to speak. So I had to spend a lot of time, and you'll see that later, but moving up the Ellis. So always have a strong count off so there's no question of where that first word is. So students could then hear this all together. 1, 2, ready, go. Alice eagles fly together. So that's the audio I'm going to send out to them, and they can hear while they sing along. Let's go to step number 2, which is making our directions. Okay, this is weird because this is me now and that's me before. But I'm going to explain the directions, and I'm just going to get out of the way and skip kind of the fluff and get right to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of what I need from the families that are contributing to the project. And I say families because a lot of times when I'm teaching elementary school, I can't depend on a student in first grade to get their own cell phone and get their own headphones and line up the track and set up a selfie camera. It's too much work. So I truly am asking the family as a team, can we work together to make this happen? So I'm just going to play the important parts of this message. Number 1, you need family permission. They need to say, yes, my child can have their face on YouTube or Facebook. Number 2, you're going to need headphones because we only want to hear your singing. We don't want to hear the track. We want the track in your ears. Number 3, you're going to have somebody in your house film you. They're going to get out their cell phone. They're going to hold it tall. Okay, why do we need a tall shot? If you were to film something wide, usually the subject is only the middle part of it. And we're going to end up cropping out all that other stuff. And when we zoom in, it's going to be blurry. When you film tall, usually we fill the frame with the subject, the face, the body. It matches the same shape as what we're filming. And so it's more likely to be zoomed in, and it won't be blurry when we crop down to just the square over their face. They're going to film you. As soon as the footage looks amazing, number 4, they're going to upload it to their favorite cloud. I'm talking Dropbox. I'm talking Google Drive. There are so many options. You upload it to your favorite one, and you share it with my email, which you can see right there. It's over there. Okay, then number 5. It is due by Sunday, April 26th. That's a hard cutoff. On Monday morning, I'm going to start editing all the footage together to make it look amazing. And I want to make sure if you're participating, I have to have your footage by then. Immediately after the directions ended, the school song plays with the words on the screen. That way students could read along if they've forgotten. 1, 2, ready, go. Step 3 is the shortest explanation. Now that you've sent out your instructions, the videos are going to start coming in. It's important to download them immediately. I know some of these clouds have expiration dates on them, so I download them and put them in a folder. Because phones can record at such a high quality, even for a 60-second video, I was receiving files that were 300 and 400 megabytes because they're filming in 4K, which is cool. I have nothing against high quality. That's a great thing. But you need to make sure you have space in your computer. The folder that's holding all of my videos is about 5 gigs right now. If the song you're attempting is 3 minutes or 10 minutes, these files could be exponentially bigger, and you need to make sure you can hold all that space. Let's create some audio. Okay, now I'm in Cubase, and I'm going to drag in the file that I sent to everyone. And I want to make sure it's the file I sent, so I want to make sure I hear 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2. Perfect, so this is the track. So I'm going to drag in a teacher's file just so I don't embarrass any students. And it shows you the video clip, and on Cubase you press Shift Delete and that video goes away. And now when I press play, it is not going to line up. And just for laughs, let's hear it where it falls. That's not going to fly. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to make sure these waveforms are super visible. And I'm going to find, I know just from doing this 100 times, that that waveform right there is where my voice starts. And I'm going to look at her waveform, and I'm going to drag it right. They start around the same time visually, and I'm going to open up my mixer here and bring down the original file and see if they can match volume. 1, 2, ready, go. Alice eagles fly together up above the weather. Fantastic. And it's a pretty easy way to line those up. Almost too easy. So let's pull up a student file that requires a little bit more work, and I'm going to mask their voice. I pulled in a student file because it has two things I want to talk to you about. The first thing I'm going to do is line up the audio before I start editing, because the problem is if you start chopping and then you need to move it around, it is no fun. I detune the track an octave just so that the voice is not too noticeable. Awesome. The word fly is going to be a real big help. Fly. I need to move the file back a little bit. Awesome. So now in the beginning, we're going to hear, I'm going to solo this track. Let's hear what the beginning sounds like. As soon as that track comes in, you hear wind, you hear air conditioning, things that are in the background we don't think about because our ears are just used to hearing them, and the camera microphones are picking them up, especially for outdoor footage. I didn't think about this, it never crossed my mind. All the outdoor footage, I heard birds, which was beautiful, but then I heard planes and cars, and the wind would blow by and you have wind bursts. And so I spent a lot of my time cutting these things out. So let's take a listen and see what we could do about that. Awesome. We can just, from the beginning, slide that information and it's gone. Now, perfect silence. That's what we want. The trouble is, that's going to happen in between the words also. So I need to use my tool here and select that space and delete it. Another option is to go into, and this worked for people who just had wind in the background, I could go over here to my equalizer and I'm going to pull out all of those low frequencies. And that helped with air conditioning and just some light wind, just to get rid of that low frequency bumbling around. The next thing I wanted to worry about are these claps. You see these big spikes right here. There were 2 claps during the video. The student was clapping while singing. And so luckily, because it's at the beginning, I can just drag the file back. But I need to look at my file and look for these spikes. Here's another one. So I'm going to use my tool and select that whole clap and hit delete. And we hear that kind of awkward right where it stops. And when we bury that in the ensemble, we're not going to notice those cutoffs. And we're going to listen to that and see if we can hear that dip in audio. We fly in perfect form. Slightly noticeable. I think it's partly because it's tuned down an octave and it sounds like my voice. But when we have 40 voices singing, it will not be noticed. Because Cubase can't read the audio files on the newest iPhone videos, I have to import the video into Filmora and export the audio as an MP3. So I'm going to drag in a video from this project. And I'm going to drag it just to the first timeline. It's going to ask me, video settings don't matter. I'm going to go to export. And I'm going to move this where you can see it. And the bottom option is MP3. And you can name this as Soprano Audio 1, something like that. And you're going to save these in a folder so all of your audio files are in the same place. Now, this seems like a lot of work, but this was only necessary for the people with the newest iPhones because that was the only audio that was not compatible with Cubase. To save you some time, you might want to watch the video first and make sure it's audio you're definitely going to use. Okay, we're fast forwarding. I have 28 tracks done now, and I want to show you a trend I'm noticing. Because the students are nervous to sing by themselves, a lot of them came in late. Now that means they sang the word Ellis later than they should have and then caught up and sang the rest of the song in time. Now what that means for me is that I need to cut off the word Ellis and move it forward so that it lines up at the beginning. And as you look at this track, and as you look at all the tracks, you can see a majority of them had to be sliced and have Ellis move forward a little bit. Ellis is the first word of the song, just in case you didn't know. Ellis eagles fly together. You can see all those splices, but yet you don't hear them because the ensemble covers them up. Ellis eagles fly together up And the beginning is by far one of the most chopped spots of the song. And so I'll give you an example as a solo. It sounds kind of silly by itself. There's a real gap in there. But just to make the Alice match my rhythm, I split up that word even by syllable. And it sounds goofy by itself. One more time. But then you put it all together, and you can't even tell. Let's talk about mixing. I'm by no means a mixing master, but I came up with a very simple system to help myself understand who should be louder and who should be softer. I used a number system of 1 through 5, and 5s being a full performance with very little edits, and the pitches were all spot on. And going down to 1 would be a situation where maybe there's lots of edits, maybe there's a dog barking in the background and I could only get a few of the barks out, and maybe some of the notes are a little off. And then I used a 10 to mark the teachers, so I knew which tracks were adults, so I can mix them and equalize them differently. Because the cameras were at different distances during the recording process, I can't necessarily put all the knobs up or down. Some tracks are naturally louder, some tracks are naturally softer, so the knobs are going to be all over the place. And what I'm looking for is just to see the level of volume and see where that lies. Some of the knobs are super high up, like this 10, but its actual volume is only reaching halfway up. Together, we fly in perfect form. And then I look at my own track, the Swick track, where the volume knob is halfway down and the volume is matching it pretty much where it's at. I'm not done yet with the audio, and I still need to put in a lot of voices, but let's get to the video portion. I'm now in Filmora9. I exported my unfinished audio, and as long as everything lines up to that audio, it'll line up in the future when all of the audio is done. So I'm going to drag in my recording and drop it down to the audio track. Let's give it a listen. Fantastic. Now everything else I do from now on is going to line up to this audio track. I've now dragged in 2 teacher files, and before we start putting them in our project, I want to go to our project settings and make sure it's exactly what we want it to be. 1920 by 1080 is full HD. That's like when you go on YouTube, it's usually the highest quality visible. 4K is an option above that, but it's just too much information for me to want to edit all of that together. It would really slow my computer down. So when I go to the frame rate, 30 is in the middle, and it's kind of the acceptable rate of today. Now that I like my settings, I'm going to hit OK. Now let's drag in our first file. Immediately it tells us the resolution and frame rate do not match our file type. We're going to say keep settings, and we're going to do that for every video that we drag into our project. So now we have the video, and we can see the waves at the bottom of it. And just like before, we're going to line up the waves. So we can get rid of this whole first part because we know that's just her waiting for the song to start. Now I'm going to zoom in on the part I know my singing on the green track starts right at that big wave right there. So I'm going to drag her file so that the waves line up. All right. And when you can't get it right, you can zoom all the way in and it does a little bit more fine tuning. There we go. And so now, because her track is still blue, we can hear her track. Now the fact that you can't hear her voice standing out is a good thing. That means we're lined up. So then I'm going to right click and hit mute. And now it's just the audio from before. And she's singing, it looks like she's singing in the ensemble, which is great. If you've seen my video, the finished product, you know that everyone only gets about 5 words. So I'm gonna get rid of the ending part. It'll help my computer run faster if we don't have all that video waiting to be lined up. So because I have that small clip. Awesome. And if I were getting real specific, I need to get rid of the word up. And I'm guessing that's it. All right, very nice. So now I need to line up a second track, and this is where things get interesting. I'm going to drag in this second track onto track number 2. The nice part about Filmora is that it has more and more tracks, but the maximum I use, I believe, was 7. So it's not like we're going to get up to 60 tracks. So now we have this track pulled in, and the wavelengths are a little bit small. So I need to grab this bar right here, and if I drag it up, it makes the wavelengths nice and visible. And we know this is where I start singing. So I'm going to line up the wavelength right there. Excellent. Now I know I only need it to be to this point, so I can drag the ending to there. I can drag the beginning to the beginning of that clip. And now let's see if it lines up audibly. Excellent. But you're saying I can't see the first one. So this is where it gets fun. I can click the first one in the preview and I can drag it anywhere in the video. So now I could easily put 3 faces side by side, one on the left, middle, and right, and that'd be pretty awesome. And we have both of them singing at the same time. Very nice. So now you need to fit 8 faces in a frame. So for me, I did the math and I had to fit about an average of 5 faces per 5 words to get all the faces in the 30-second span. If I need to do that, I can right click and hit crop and zoom, or Alt-C. I can go to a custom crop, and instead of it being a tall shot, we could zoom right in on the face, and then we could make one video small. Excellent. So you can make those squares as small as you need to fit as many faces in there as possible. So now we have a stacked video, but what do we do for the videos after that? So let's put in a third teacher video and see how we add the next frame. And just like before, we're going to make our audio huge because we're going to end up muting it anyway. So this is on track 3. And I'm going to line up the first wave. Perfectly lined up. Now, unlike before, I'm not going to chop off the beginning. I'm going to actually go to the end of this clip. And I'm going to chop the video that's on top. I'm going to delete the first part. And we're going to see how far we want this person to sing. Awesome. We want the word together to be the next group. I'm going to click the scissors. And now mute. I'm going to right click and hit mute or Control Shift M. And let's see how that looks. So I lined up the words Ellis at the beginning, and because of that, everything else will line up at the end. So what I need to do is just chop where I want the files to go. And when I'm all done with lining it up, I'm going to drag it down to 1, the first track, so that when I put my next file on 3, it doesn't mess with anything. And that's how we're going to create these stacks. So a good tip would be to go through and to fill in your whole first track to make sure you know where your transitions are. And that way you can do the math for how many faces do you need to show in each of those stacks before the song is over. All right, fast forward. I have all of my video done. Everything is lined up. And you can see how these stacks work out. So every stack, every one of those squares is a video feed. And you can see how I made those fill up the screen. And let's say I had a person submit their video right now. What I could do is go up to one of these stacks and move a face down and then fill that square right there with the new video. Now let's say my audio is all complete. I got the video done and now my audio is all done. I can go down to the bottom and delete the audio. Let's see what that looks like. Pretty quiet, right? Yeah, not a lot going on. So then I can drag my finished audio underneath, and because they start at the same time, I don't have to change anything. And I edited out my 1, 2, ready, go. And the audio I created in Cubase is now perfectly lined up with the finished video. Okay, so now your video's done. It is a full video. It's ready to be put on the internet. But something we need for both platforms, YouTube and Facebook, is a thumbnail. Thumbnails are hugely important. Thumbnails are the reason people stop what they're doing and click on your video. Your description is hardly what they read. They look at the picture. Is it exciting? Is it colorful? Is it what I want to look at? So it needs to be, and I mean this with all love, deceptive, or at least eye-catching at the minimum for people to click on it. So let's create our thumbnail. I have my video loaded, and what I'm going to do is actually go through and screenshot every stack that I created. So let's fast forward. All right. Now, this might be a little difficult. We want a frame where everyone looks happy. Now I kind of look like I'm wearing my Glossarium shirt. That's kind of cool. Okay, so now on Windows computers, we have this thing called Snipping Tool. If you open up your Windows tab and you type in snip, it says Snipping Tool right there. And you're going to hit New. And what it allows you to do is pick a whole portion of your screen. And it says, do you want to save that? And I'm going to save it. And you can see I've already saved all of my screenshots right here. Okay, now I'm in Adobe Animate, which there's a ton of options for apps you can use to do this. Adobe Animate's the one I'm most comfortable with. I have some friends that can do this perfectly in PowerPoint. Good for them. I have to do it in Animate. So I drag in my first frame, and if I hold shift, it's going to keep it all in perspective, and I can put that in the corner. And much like a puzzle, if you like puzzles, you're going to drag in all those screenshots you just took, and you're going to start lining them up, and you're going to fill up your screen. Now, this took a little bit of work for me because when I went this big, I ran out of space pretty quick. As you can see, it's not a perfect science. So what I can do in this situation is make the file bigger and have that student cut off, copy, paste, and have that student right here on the next line. And so when I look at my final product, they can all still fit in there. And I'm just going to fast forward, kind of like a cooking show, to my other file. And you can see here, I had some students that couldn't fit in the frame. And so then I re-pasted their photo up here. And when I show it all finished, it looks like that. And it's important also in your frame, and I didn't do a great job of this, but to have a text explaining what's going on. The Alice Virtual School song, I didn't want to call it a virtual choir, and this is a philosophical point for me, but if this wasn't our school choir, this was supposed to be the entire school. And so I didn't want to make anyone feel like I'm not in the choir so I can't sing. I want us to be everybody. So I thought titling it the Alice Virtual School song was much more open arms for anyone who wants to sing. Now that your video's done, we need to share it with the world. Facebook and YouTube do not work well together, so I think it's important to have a YouTube video and a Facebook video. Facebook registers views far easier and far faster than YouTube. A video has this many views, and on Facebook it has this many views. That's not really the same, because Facebook registers views faster. When you're scrolling, if you stop and look at it, they count that as a view. So you may just say, I need it just on Facebook, but YouTube is easier to share. So let's say a parent sees your video on Facebook and they want to send it to grandma. Well, grandma doesn't like your page, or grandma doesn't have Facebook, grandma doesn't like the school's page, something like that. Send them the YouTube link. So I think it's important to have both for viewership and sharing. Closing thoughts. Virtual ensembles have an incredible end product, but it takes a working knowledge of audio and video software to make it happen. There are easier ways to do it than this. You don't need to make sure your audio is perfect. You could just line up the video in a video editing software, and that could work just fine. I went the extra step for the audio because I really wanted a product that would last forever, not just the quarantine, but something we could have as an artifact of our time now. There is no such thing as a live Zoom ensemble. It doesn't exist. All of them are doctored or made up in a way to look like they're real, but they don't exist. I promise you. If you need to convince someone, send them this video to show them that it was not just us on Zoom all singing together. The internet would never allow such a thing to work so easily. So I hope you enjoyed my video, and I'll see you later.